Welcome back to our show. We're back for another exciting time period of us talking about stuff that we're experts on because we're Washington fans. You may notice I'm wearing a baseball jersey on a football podcast, but that's because today is the 26th, March 26th. Opening day for baseball is tomorrow, so I'm wearing a baseball jersey. And then we're going to go straight into hockey because I do want to ask one question of Mike and Joe, since we're all Capitals fans. Ovi scored last night. He's 6 away from breaking Gretzky's record. I believe there's 11 games left in the season, maybe 12.
11.
11. So my question to the two of you, Mike, you go first. Is Ovi going to break Gretzky's record this year, or is it going to go into next year?
So I don't know. Statistically, I'd say probably not this year. 11
Statistically
games.
would say he would break it this year and then some.
Well, not anymore. He would have to get the rest of the season. These 11 games, it's like a 0.545 goals per game, right?
Yeah.
So yes, that is over a larger span of games. That is an average he could hit. And I think he's above that this year based on the games he's played.
Yes.
However, now that we're down to only 11 games, it's really doing. He has to score more than every other game. It's to score every other game and have a 2-goal game somewhere in there or something, or however.
But that's less than his scoring average for the season right now.
Correct, for the season. How many games is that? Now we're talking about just 11 games. So it's hard to look at the average as we get smaller and smaller. You're a math guy, you know this. So here's the other side to that, though. I was reading something about him, and apparently when he is approaching a goal like this, something like this, his performance tends to jump up a little bit.
Okay.
So do I think he'll do it this year? I'm really not sure, but if he does, I think it'll be in the last game of the season. And it will be a fascinating game if that's how it happens.
Okay. Joe, thoughts?
He's going to have a storybook ending. He's going to break the record this year. He's going to win the cup, and he's going to retire. Say, I'm done. I've done it all.
Well, that's an interesting prediction. Since we don't do predictions here, this is about the only time we'll do predictions or anything around here.
But, well, we're not talking about football, so we're allowed to do predictions.
Exactly. Thank you very much for clarifying that. I think, Mike, I like what you said, and Spencer Carberry, coach, said something a while back about how he thought Ovi still had a lot left to show this season. So I think with him ramping things up, going for a milestone, and the fact that Washington is not sitting back because they're still playing for, they haven't secured number 1 seed overall in the conference yet. They still have to play that. Yeah, they're qualified for the playoffs, but they want the number 1 seed, so they still have a lot to play for. So I think that, coupled with how Ovi ups his game, I think he breaks it before the end of the season. When that happens, I don't know, but I did see one thing. The biggest, some of the days had like a 15% chance. It was like a game against the Islanders or something like that. But anyway, so Joe says he breaks it this year. I say he breaks it this year. Mike, you were long-winded, and I don't know what the hell you were talking about.
Which is it, Mike? Is he going to do it or not?
I was non-committal.
Oh, non-committal. Okay, well, way to ride that fence. There's no money on this, so it's okay. All right, well, whatever. All right, we'll go into football then. But anyway, go Caps. I'd like to see him win another cup. That would be fun. And if they could play someplace that I can get to and go to another game, that would be wonderful, since I was at Game 5 when they won it last time. So,
and you were on TV.
And I was on TV, yes. So we're going to talk about some of the potential rule changes for this season. The league, the owners meeting is coming up next week, I believe. It might start this upcoming weekend, but it goes into next week. The coaches and the owners will all be wherever it is they're meeting, and they'll talk about all the different, some of the business side of things. But this is when they talk about potential rule changes, because the league needs to vote on things. They need a 3/4 vote to pass anything. So some of the proposals we're going to talk about, I think 4 or 5 different proposals that are on the board for this. The first one we're going to talk about was the kickoff rules, and this is the last year they put in the dynamic kickoff, I think is what they call it, and this is where the kicker stays at the 35-yard line. Is always done, but the kicking team lines up at the opposing 40-yard line. The receiving team, I think, lines up at the 35-yard line. You can have 2 receivers back, and the kicker kicks the ball, and no one can move until the ball is caught. And then it's a normal kickoff. You could still kick it in the end zone for a touchback. And so the speculation is that this will become a permanent thing this year. And then as part of that is right now, if you have a touchback where the ball goes into the end zone, whether it bounces out of the end zone or it's caught in the end zone and you take a knee, the touchback, the ball comes out to the 30. There's talk about changing it to the 35 to encourage more teams to kick the ball short to have more returns. Hopefully that all makes sense.
Yep.
So
I think you nailed it.
if it does, then let's go to Mike. What do you think about that? Do you think that will make a difference in anything? Are you excited about the potential of the dynamic kickoff? Did you even pay attention to it last year? What do you think it adds to the game? What have you?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I paid attention to it because it was such a weird, like watching a kickoff. It was so different to as the ball's kicked, see no motion. I don't feel like it made a big difference to me. And I mean, look, I have no stats to back that up. I have no quantifiable data. It just, to me, didn't feel like it made a big difference. I still feel like we saw a lot of touchbacks. I'm intrigued by moving it to the 35 for a touchback because maybe we will see, teams start kicking it shorter and we'll see more returns. So if they're gonna keep it, and I don't feel strongly that it didn't add to the game or detract. But if they're gonna keep it, I'll be curious to see how moving it to the 35-yard line makes a difference, and to see if we really see more returns out of that.
Joe?
Are we talking about kickers again?
No, we're not talking about kickers.
Oh,
we're talking about kicking.
sorry. We're talking about kicking play. Sorry, that's different.
Yes.
Yeah,
Different.
Okay.
Different.
So it's kind of interesting because I remember right. The original proposal last year was that they were going to take it to the 35, and then they settled on the 30. So and I think they're realizing like, yeah, let's do that and let's make it more of a like, hey, let's kick it short and have a play out of it, because I actually do remember more kickoff returns. And unfortunately we had, was it Eckler got a concussion on one when he was trying to get so it's like I do remember seeing more plays coming back or running out of the end zone. And it's like, this is kind of exciting. We actually made a couple of big plays. We got past the 25 or past the 30, and it was like, all right, it was worth it. So as far as that goes, I like it. It looks funny as hell with the lining up of the way they do it. Yes. That's weird, but I like having the extra play, and I like that there's another, the special teams actually matters again. Before, so many of those kickoffs were going right into the end zone, touchback, and it's like, this is a dumb play. Just like a field goal when, from the 2-yard line, it's like, that's a gimme play for these guys. They move it back, and now kickers are missing them.
To me, it's interesting that for the last couple of years, they've been tinkering with the kickoffs, because the kickoff is one of the most dangerous plays with the most injuries, most concussions, all that type of stuff. And so now they want to tweak the rules to encourage more returns. And I realize it's different. You don't have players running all the way from the 35. You're not running full speed all the way down the field. Because it used to be the kicking team could line up 5 yards behind the kicker and get a 5-yard running start before he kicked the ball. They eliminated that, and now they eliminated any running down the field, but they still want to encourage more returns because it does add excitement, even though it's the play of the game that usually causes the most injuries. So I'm just, player safety is paramount for the league, except when it's not. I don't care one way or the other, quite honestly. They stole it from the XFL or the UFL with those two leagues, whatever that combined now, that's owned by the Rock. That's where they got it from. So if it works, and yeah, Eckler did a good job on returns last year, so I don't care one way or the other. One other thing on the kickoffs, they're talking about also potentially changing for onside kicks. Right now, you can only do it in the fourth quarter if you're trailing and you have to announce it. I think that there was talk that they might change it where if you can do it if you're trailing at any point. I thought that's what I read, but I don't remember exactly. So we won't go too deep.
No, you're right.
You guys know more about it.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. At any time during the game if you're trailing.
Okay.
Are they actually voting on that? I thought I saw somewhere that like they decided not to even bother voting on it, and that nothing was going to change this year on it.
Well, I might have seen something either yesterday or this morning or something, and I haven't paid attention to anything all day. So
yeah, I mean, it looks like it is going to be voted on.
Okay.
Based on what I'm looking at, yeah.
We'll have to see what happens.
So next rule change, as it were, is playoff seeding. Detroit introduced this one about taking it so that if you're a division winner, you automatically still make the playoffs, but playoff seeding is done by record, overall record, regardless of whether or not you're a wild card or a division winner. And in this, like as it relates to last year, you had the Vikings, who had the second best record, tied for the second best record in the NFC, became the number five seed behind the four division winners, and had to play their first playoff game, or their playoff game on the road against the division winner. If the rule was changed, then they would have had a home playoff game. So, Joe, let's go to you first on this one. What do you think this is a good idea of seeding based on overall record, regardless of whether or not you're a division winner? We're not talking about division winners not getting a playoff spot or anything like that. It's just seeding based on overall record.
Yeah, I mean, I could argue it either way, I think, because it's an interesting way to look at it, and it kind of sucks, especially for the Vikings in that situation, because they did play better. They should have been ranked higher. And then if you look at what we had a couple of years ago when we played, I think it was 2020, when we didn't even have a winning record. We made it into playoffs and won the division. And it's like we didn't belong in there. Like, we sucked. And then we had home field advantage against, the Buccaneers, and they came in and they beat us as they should have. But it's like, we really shouldn't. We didn't deserve a home field advantage or a home field game at that time because we were terrible. Yeah. But I understand both sides of it. I mean, like, you won your division, so you should have some type of, accolades for that. And
sure.
But then, the Vikings also only lost 3 games last year.
Yeah.
I guess if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Okay. Mike?
Well, so I think Detroit would tell you it's broke, but that's based on 1 year. So, and I'm with you. I'm torn on it. I think in thinking about it over the last few days, one of the things that I kind of get to is it feels, I mean, look, Detroit is proposing it. It's a reaction to one postseason, 1 year. And Joe, you just gave an example of another year, but do you completely change something that has been working based on, yes, there are times when a division is so bad that a 8-9 team wins the division and gets home field, whatever. But it doesn't happen every year. And I think in a lot of years, it probably isn't a big deal. So do you go and change a rule just as a reaction to these weird seasons where something like that happens? And I'm just not sure that you do.
Well, when you look at it a little bit closer to home, Washington had the 4th best record in the division last year, or in the conference last year, if I remember correctly. That means they would have had a home game, a home playoff game. Yeah. Where instead they were a wild card and they went on the road. Now they won, so okay, yay. But maybe home field isn't so important, because it's even the example that Joe used. Washington had a home field against Tampa Bay and they lost. Well, this last year, who did Washington play in the playoffs? Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay, right?
Yeah. In Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay lost. So maybe if Washington and Tampa Bay play both teams want to play on the road, and they should just find a neutral site. But I like the way it is. I'm with Mike. This is a system that's been in place for forever and a day. You win the division. I think that's worth something. I think if you get the home field, I don't know. I don't see a reason to change it. And I think, Mike, you're right. This is a reactionary thing because Detroit, I think, realizes how close they were to being in Minnesota's shoes this year. Like if they had lost to Minnesota in the last game of the season, then they would have been the number 5 seed. They would have been playing on the road for the playoffs. Of course, maybe they wish they were playing on the road since they lost at home to Washington.
Well, wasn't it with Detroit though less about the home field and more about their opponent in the second round? They would have had the lowest seed opponent, and they didn't.
Well, that's reseeding though. Is that something different? I mean, because you could reseed the playoffs. Because is it? And I'm gonna.
Well, that could be a different way to approach it.
On this, is it predetermined that since you had Washington, you had Tampa Bay playing Washington last year, the number 4 versus number 5 seed. Was it predetermined when the playoffs started that Detroit was going to play the winner of that game, regardless of how the other games went? Or if whoever I don't even remember who the 7 seed was. If the 7 seed had won,
Green Bay.
Who was it? Green Bay. If Green Bay had beaten Philly, would Green Bay have gone to Detroit?
Yeah, that's how it's set up, isn't it? They do the reseeding.
Okay, so then I don't think that's.
But they don't. But
that's the argument, Mike. Maybe it is, but I don't think that that doesn't sound right to me.
Okay.
Well, but see, let's see. The problem is if you did it in round 2, if you reseeded in round 2, based on your records from the regular season, that would be an interesting take. That way the 4 division winners get their home field advantage for the first game. And if you're a really bad team, you were in a bad division and you won that year, what if you go into the second round, someone like the Vikings who came in 14-3, they went into second or third place, and then they had a home field game. Instead of coming in at, I guess they were 5th, weren't they? Actually,
I don't know.
They were 5th and we were 6th. And
maybe
Minnesota was the 5 seed. Minnesota was the 5 seed. Washington was the 6 seed. Green Bay was the 7 seed.
Okay.
Right, but the Lions in the divisional round played the Commanders. Philly got to play the Rams. Rams had a 10-7 record. That's not a reseeding then.
No, that's because the Rams beat Minnesota. I mean, it doesn't matter because Minnesota lost.
Or I guess it is.
The argument is that Minnesota should have had a home game because they had the second best record in the conference.
Yeah, I don't
know if they had the tiebreaker with Philly or not, but they had this.
All right,
they
should probably go more on this. Because maybe I'm on, but I'm just saying the 15-2 Lions, if they reseeded, they would have if they reseeded for that round, they would have faced the Rams, who had the worst record of the 4 remaining teams.
I think when they say reseeding, though, they just mean like it's not a bracket that's locked in. They take the worst.
I think. Sorry for talking over, Joe. I think it's locked in that Detroit was going to play the winner of the Washington Tampa Bay game, regardless of the results. What happened shows that. I mean, that's the thing.
That's not correct. They would have played Green Bay had Green Bay won.
Oh, you're right. Right. Okay. So, yeah, because the Rams were 4 seed. So you're talking about reseeding based on records? I don't like that at all. I'm toying. We're brainstorming here. Don't bring an umbrella to a brainstorm. I think that's from what was that show? Anyway, I don't know.
But no, I guess they call it reseeding when they do it the second round, but not based on records, because that way, whoever is the worst team going into the playoffs will play the best team in the playoffs. And if things went, correctly, the teams that are 2, 3, and 4 would beat 4, 5, and 6, right? Or 6, 5, 6, 7. Excuse me. 2, 3, 4 would beat 5, 6, 7.
Right.
And then you would have 4 versus 1 and 2 versus 3. And that's
Right.
what would, that's how they would do it. But they take the worst team, whoever the worst one is. So we were the worst going in against the Lions.
So it's reseeded. It can be reseeded based on the seeds, not on the record.
Right. So we were the worst because we didn't win the division.
Right.
And I think that's what Detroit's I think that's where Detroit's proposal gets to, is it's truly just based on record for the seedings across the board. So the reseed would have still had them not facing the Commanders in the
They
second
wanted
round.
to play the worst regular season team still available to play.
Correct. That's what I think. That's what I think it's about.
Okay. So that makes sense. I can understand why they would do that since they got the butts kicked by Washington. But I don't like it. I think there's something to winning your division. They could always change on how a division winner is determined. They could base it on division record, but we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. So real quick then, let's sum it up. Mike, do you think that they should seed the playoffs starting from the very beginning based on overall regular season record, or should the division winners get the top 4 seeds and hold that through the entire playoffs?
I don't think they should change anything right now.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. It'd be fun to tinker with it, but I think to take one example of last season and use that to dictate the future, I think that's where you're wrong. But if you were to kind of tinker with it a little bit, I mean, maybe you could have some fun with it. Like if you're the division lead and you lose in the playoffs, then the team you lose to gets a home, the next home game.
So if you're going to do anything, which again, I'm not saying we do this, but the Detroit proposal essentially says, amend the current seeding format to allow wild card teams to be seeded higher than division champions if the wild card team has a better regular season record. So that would have changed that second round reseed the way it worked. I don't think, and look, I'm not saying we just, but if you were going to do it, I would only say in the second round, would you then throw out being a divisional winner potentially?
Well, yeah, it would change it in the first round because in the first round you would have had Detroit still gets their bye, and you would have had, again, I don't know who had the tiebreaker between Minnesota and Minnesota and Philadelphia, but Philly as the 2 seed, they would have played the 7 seed, which would have been, I believe, the Rams.
Packers.
They have the worst record. And then
Minnesota record.
No, they didn't have the worst record. You're saying if we throw out the divisional?
If we seeded the playoffs last year based only on the regular season record, then your playoffs would have been Philadelphia versus
the Rams. Yeah.
You would have had Minnesota versus Tampa Bay and Washington versus Green Bay.
We could have beat Green Bay, so I'm for that.
Well, it doesn't matter because we beat Detroit. I mean, we beat
we did.
We beat Detroit, so who cares? The problem is we couldn't beat Philly. So
no one could apparently.
All right, so we'll stick a pin in that because
just leave it alone.
There could
be. We may revisit that one at some point in time.
Yes. Okay, so next one is defensive holding. Right now, if there's a defensive holding, it's a 5-yard penalty and it's an automatic first down. So you could have 3rd and 30, and you as a defensive player could hold an offensive player within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and it's a 5-yard penalty and an automatic first down. And that can be on the opposite side of the field of where the play was going, and it's an automatic first down. So the proposal is to eliminate the automatic first down. You can still have it 5 yards. Maybe you make it 10 yards. maybe you make it a spot foul, the same way that pass interference is. And I don't know if these options are on the table, but you could change it that way, but it's no longer an automatic first down. Joe, what do you think?
Get rid of the automatic first down.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like that. I do want to make a comment though. It is kind of funny because the team that's proposing this is the Detroit Lions, and they were the most penalized defensive team, so they're the ones that are pissed off about it. So I think that's kind of funny, but it's a valid argument. It's ridiculous that something that could be so minor is, it's going to change the game. That automatic first down is just too much. As far as the yardage goes, I'll split the difference. Make it 7.5 yards. Let's make it really weird.
Joe just keeps wanting to add fun into the league. That's all he wants to do, whether it's the playoffs or defensive holding.
Why not? They're calling it the no fun league. Let's add some fun to it.
All right. Well, then tell you what, Joe, for the playoffs, I'll take a step back for the playoffs to make it real fun. 7 teams qualify for the playoffs. Throw the 7 names into a hat. First name gets pulled, they get a bye. Second name plays the third name. Fourth name plays the fifth name. 6th plays the 7th. There's your playoff seedings.
Didn't we say we were sticking a pin in that? I thought we were done with that one.
All right.
Yeah, whatever. All right, Mike, what do you think about defensive holding?
No, I agree. I'm good with getting rid of the automatic first down. I've never liked that. So.
Okay, so the 3 of us are all in agreement for that. Let's get rid of the automatic first down. So then, what is your solution? Do we go with? Is it just 5 yards and redo the down? Do you up it to 10 yards? Could you make it a spot foul? Does it change based on how close it is to the line of scrimmage or anything like that? What do you think, Mike?
I mean, look, I would leave it at the 5 yards. Listening to you talk about it, I could probably be convinced that maybe it could be made a 10-yard penalty.
Okay.
But I would just get rid of the automatic first down and leave the rest of it alone.
I mean, offensive holding is 10 yards. Why shouldn't defensive holding be 10 yards?
Yeah, that's why. I'm listening. I'm like, yeah, I can see that argument.
Yeah, I'm not making an argument. I'm just throwing stuff out right now. Joe,
I'm saying I can see making it 10 yards, and that's
okay.
Yeah,
Joe.
I was just gonna say the only problem is I think the offensive and defensive lines would all agree on this. There's holding on every play.
Well, sure there is.
So it's like, when is the ref going to call it? And the refs can call them at the worst time and make, massive changes in the way the flow of the game is going. So I don't know, 5 yards, 10 yards. I mean, the 10 yards almost an automatic first down if you're not.
The difference though is for defensive holding, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'm willing to bet that a vast majority of them are not the defensive line holding the offensive line. It's your defensive secondary. It's linebackers grabbing someone going across the middle. It's a cornerback who gets beat and grabs a jersey. It's not the defensive line that's doing all the holding. Yes, there are defensive line holding penalties, sure, but it's more of, I would say, the secondary and the linebackers in coverage who are holding rather than the defensive line. I mean, so I think I would want to see stats on it. I say keep it at 5. And no automatic first down, but I could very easily be persuaded to say 10 yards.
I could see spot of the foul being kind of critical, because if you're holding, the secondary is holding a running back a wide receiver that's about to snag a ball and go run for a touchdown. It's like, and it's not quite pass interference, but it's shy of it. But he could have caught the ball. Then it's like he's losing out.
Well, let's remember that the difference, and this is where the difference is if the penalty occurs before the ball leaves the quarterback's hands, it's holding. If the ball's in the air, it's pass interference.
Oh, all right.
So does that change any of your thought process? Either one of you.
Get rid of the. I rescind what I said before. No. Not the spot of the foul.
Okay.
I'm going to stick with 5. I like 5.
Okay. Mike, does that change anything for you?
Nope.
Okay.
Doesn't change it.
All right.
I like 5.
Okay. So the next one we're going to talk about is overtime rules. And the proposal is to make regular season overtime more like, not more like playoff overtime rules. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. I am not 100% certain on what regular season overtime rules are right now. So if one of you knows it off the top of your head, please chime in. But if I remember correctly, there's a coin flip.
Mhm.
If you win the toss, if you score a touchdown, you win the game. But if you only kick a field goal, then your opponent gets the ball to try and score to win the game. Obviously, if you turn the ball over, then it's the first score wins the game. Is that correct?
I believe so. That is what I believe it is.
And in the playoffs, each team gets an opportunity. I think unless the first team takes a 10-minute drive, which is how long overtime is. It's 10 minutes. Unless
So
I think
even in the
playoff overtime might be 15 minutes.
if you were to get a touchdown on your first, you win the coin toss and you get a touchdown, isn't that the end of the game?
Yeah.
In regular season, yes, but I don't think that's the case in playoff. I think in playoff, both teams get a chance to touch the ball.
Correct.
So my thought is this: whatever the hell the overtime rules are, they should be the same for the whole season. Overtime or playoffs and regular season should be the same, so there's no more confusion because we don't even know what's going on, and we're sitting here watching the game. We should be able to know when to cheer and know what's going to happen and what we should be, what we want to happen.
Well, I think it should be uniform as well, but to counteract that, I'll throw this out since we were talking about hockey earlier.
Yeah.
Hockey regular season overtime is 3-on-3. Now, it didn't always used to be this way, but
Stupidest
it's
thing in the world.
3-on-3 for 5 minutes. And we all know that overtime hockey in the playoffs is a 20-minute period. First goal scored wins the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So there's a difference in hockey, and I think everyone who's a hockey fan, even people who aren't hockey fans, would agree that that's a very good thing to have a full period to play for overtime playoff hockey, as opposed to doing 3-on-3 for 5 minutes.
And potentially risking it ending in a shootout. Nobody wants a playoff game, especially to end in a skills competition.
Right.
So,
well, that's I think that's I think that's the next step. I think that we can disregard that. I mean, we're talking about overtime itself and maybe not what happens after that, because in the playoffs, it's just another overtime period. They don't go to the shoot. In regular season, it's one playoff period, 5 minutes, and if it's still tied, then it's a shootout. Again, change now for the playoffs. It's just 20-minute period after 20-minute period after 20-minute period until someone scores a goal. Now, I realize hockey's different than football because there's no coin flip, and more than likely, we saw this last night in the Caps game against Winnipeg. Washington dominated the first part of overtime. They controlled the puck the entire time. They turn it over one time. Winnipeg goes down, shoots, score, game over. So, I would like to see it uniform for the NFL between regular season and postseason. What that entails, I'm not 100% sure. I would like to see a 15-minute period. Personally, what I would like to see is a 15-minute period played out to its fullest. Not first team that scores wins. It's 15 minutes. Play the quarter, play the period, and just play it out. Because no one's going on a 15-minute drive.
I mean, I'd like to see that too, but I will say I agree with this change, at least to it's kind of the whole idea of fair ups. I mean, if you look at like baseball, like,
yes,
extra innings, everyone gets their chance. In the current regular season, like, you win a coin toss and all you got to do is I know I'm oversimplifying it, but if you score a touchdown, the other guy doesn't even get a chance. So you essentially lost the game on a coin toss. So I do like the idea of both teams getting possession, and it would be a 15-minute overtime, not the 10-minute, but.
And that's why they changed the rules, because of what happened in the playoffs. And I forget what teams it was, but teams were going down and scoring automatically. And it's like, you're deciding a playoff game on a coin flip, and nobody liked that. Of course, the other side of that is, and I think this was Trent Dilfer did it when he was quarterback, maybe for Seattle. And I forget who they were playing, but the game went to overtime. Seattle won the coin flip. He says, we'll take the ball and we're going to score. And he went out and he threw a pick six. So Stranger things have happened. Of course, if that happens, a defensive touchdown on the first possession of overtime, then the defense wins the game. So, yeah, I would like to. So let's sum this up then. I would like to see a 15-minute overtime played, and if you want to do 10 minutes during the regular season and 15 minutes during the playoffs, that's fine. But it's not first team that scores, and I think both teams do need the opportunity to possess the ball. So like if your regular season, if you get the ball first and you have an 8-minute drive, then your opponents get a drive. There's no time on that other than the play clock, but they just get one drive. And then in the playoffs, it's 15 minutes. And if it's still tied after 15 minutes, then you play another 15-minute period, like that type of thing. What do you guys got? Final word. Either one.
I mean, I like what you're proposing. I don't think we're going to get that. So for now, I'll take this rule change of expand it to 15 minutes and both teams at least get one drive.
Right. Okay. Joe?
So that's what, sorry, just to clarify, that's what they're voting on is 15 minutes and each team gets a drive? And that would match the playoffs?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm for.
Okay. All right. So we're in agreement with that.
Okay.
All right. So the last rule change, we actually had a chat about this earlier in the week, the tush push. And so hopefully this will go smooth, but we recorded that conversation from earlier this week. So we're going to cut that in at the end of this video. And so we're going to wrap things up here, but don't go away because there's going to be a little bit more after this. But guys, any final words since right now about any of the rule changes, any last thing or any other rule that you want to see changed, would like to see changed? Joe, you first.
I can't think of any other rules that jump out at me that are, egregious and need to be changed. I guess final thoughts are, it's going to be hard to get the 75% of the owners to agree on these to change them, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, Mike.
No, I mean, I guess at this point I'll be curious to see how it plays out. I don't think there's any crazy egregious rule changes proposed, except for maybe the tush push, which we'll get into here in the next segment.
Okay. Well, I got nothing else I want to add. So thanks as always for watching. Appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button, like us, leave a comment. We'd love it. Any feedback you want to share with us, we would greatly appreciate. Otherwise, we'll see you next week on the next show. Thanks so much. Part of their explanation about changing it was game flow, because it comes from the game against Washington.
Yeah, which was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I can't
believe the one where they almost awarded a touchdown?
Yes.
I was on the fence about the tush push until that series when they did that crap. We were doing, I mean, look, it's hard to defend against. We were trying to defend against it, and they were going to award a touchdown. Bullshit.
Well, the problem that I have with the tush push is, one, it used to be illegal for you to push a player from behind.
Right.
And this, it changed really going back to college when Reggie Bush would push. I think it was Matt Leinart was his quarterback at USC, and they did it against Notre Dame, and that was a big moment. But when you go back and you watch the playoff game between Washington and Philly, and you see how everybody's lined up on every single attempt, the offensive line is offsides.
Yes.
They have an illegal procedure because the offensive linemen are lying too far forward with the center, and you have the defensive line is offsides as well, every single time. And that's the problem with it. Like, I get it. You can't stop the play. It's like a bat flip in baseball. You don't want to see a player do a bat flip, don't give up a home run. It's really that simple. You don't want this to be an effective play, then stop it. Figure out a way to stop it. But I don't like
it a few times. But we should definitely talk about this next week. But,
I was gonna say, you say 2 minutes. I'm like, depending on what the rules are, we could probably spend a lot of time talking about the proposed rule changes.
McAfee talks about it sometimes, and there's a the defense, on the defensive side, they've made a rule that you're not allowed to be pushing against the players in front of you. So it's like, why is it allowed on the offensive side?
Right. So maybe I'll be curious. I don't remember when it became I don't want to say in vogue in the league or legal, but I mean, I guess maybe when it did become legal, because it used to be illegal. You could not push players or pull players, that type of thing. And now you see it all the time when a receiver or running backs down the field, they're 15 yards down the field. And what do you see? You see an offensive lineman come up from behind them and just run into the pile and push the pile forward 2 or 3 yards. That used to be illegal. If I remember correctly, that would have been an illegal play.
I remember that too. You weren't allowed to assist someone into the end zone. Well, specifically into the end zone, but you weren't allowed to go up and just give them a shove. They had to get in under their own power, and then they changed this. The QB sneak is fine, but what they're doing is ridiculous. And every player, like you said, is lining up offsides. And if you watch, and I wouldn't be surprised if the center for the Eagles is doing the same thing that Kelsey was doing before, where he'd get up to the line of scrimmage and then he'd steal half a yard or a yard with the ball placement, and they're already starting that
every
much further
center
ahead.
does that. Every center does that. That's not just a Kelsey thing. The centers have been doing that for years.
Yeah. Well, and that's fine, but I'm picking on them because of the damn tush push.
Sure.
The brotherly shove, but it's like on a play like that where all you're trying to do is get half a yard, you're stealing half a yard.
Right, but again, that's always been the case. That's nothing new, and I don't have a problem with that, because until the league wants to stop that, and I say years, it's decades that's been going on. I mean, you could go back and watch Washington, and you probably see Jeff Bostic doing the exact same thing, or Len Haas before him doing the exact same thing. So, Dwight Stevenson, who was an All-Pro center for Miami, Mike Webster, who was part of the Pittsburgh Steelers when they were winning all their Super Bowls back in the 70s. It's the same thing. These guys are all doing it. That's part of what makes them so good. Is they know how to manipulate the game. If the ref's not calling it, it must not be a penalty, right?
Yeah, and that's fine. I'm not even I'm not suggesting that that's an issue. It's just it's a compounding issue when you add these 3 or 4 factors into it for this one particular play that was bullshit in the playoff game against us.
Well, what I'm hoping is it will be like what the league has started to crack down on the last 2 seasons, and that is with and this really focused on Kansas City, because I think they were the biggest offenders of this. Is their tackle would line up about a half step further back than they were allowed to by rule, and that gives them an advantage against a good pass rusher. And so you started seeing these calls a little bit more often over the last 2 years, and that's a good thing. To me, that's a very good thing for football, for the game. And so you got to call, if it's a penalty, it's a penalty. It doesn't matter whether or not you agree with the rule. And that's what's the NFL was becoming like the NBA, where they just kind of say, well, we're just not calling that. We know they're breaking the rule, but it's like traveling. They don't call traveling in the NBA. When they do, everybody freaks out because they don't know what the call is anymore. Well, in the NFL, it's the same thing. So the tush push, everyone's offsides or lined up improperly, but they don't call it. The offensive tackle who would line up a little bit further back, they didn't call that until recently. Now they started calling it. So that's my hope, is that someone is looking at this and saying, okay, we're not going to outlaw the tush push, but you have to you can run that play within the rules. And right now, I don't think it's being run within the rules. So that's what I would like to see first, rather than the play be banned.
Well, I mean, the only difference between that and the old school QB sneak is 2 guys shoving the other guy's ass.
So we're clearly doing our next podcast here.
I know we need to record this and just splice it in next week.
What is I mean, it's I mean,
technically recording, but
it's we're still recording. That's the thing. I mean, so yeah, we cut all this bullshit out, but
so it was the Packers that have proposed the change, and what it looks like their proposal is to prohibit an offensive player from pushing a teammate who was lined up directly behind the snapper and received the snap immediately at the snap. So it's very specific to, you can't have somebody lined up behind the quarterback push them in.
Okay.
The way I'm reading that.
Yeah.
Love it. Change
So
the rules.
technically, if they're not lined up right behind, if they're next to the quarterback, they in theory could still push them in. The way, as I'm understanding, I'm literally learning this right now on the fly. So,
well, that's the interesting thing. I mean, if you could, you know, I like the QB sneak because that's different. You have a quarterback that maybe takes a half step backwards and sees where the gap is, which guard side has a gap that he can lean into and gain that half yard or whatever it is he needs, or he's jumping over the center a little bit and extending the ball and hoping it doesn't get knocked out of his hands. I like that. That to me, I like that play, especially like at the goal line.
yeah.
You know, what I don't like is you have, I mean, I don't know if they've done this where you have, because in theory, if you have 7 people on the line and you have a quarterback, you would have 3 people behind the quarterback all pushing him. And that's, or pushing each other. And that's, I don't like that. You could have someone. So based on Mike, what you just said, you could, as Joe said, have someone standing next to him. But as soon as that quarterback takes the snap and steps forward, that player next to him is now behind him. And they could even take a step back and start pushing. And then it's, how long do you let the play go on before you rule it dead, so they have enough time to push for a first down?
Right. So like you said, the player next to him, quarterback takes a snap and steps up and is now behind him and can come over at sort of an angle. But what it does, it creates a half a second for the defense to try to have a chance of blocking it. Otherwise, you're just facing 2 guys pushing forward.
Yeah, there is a difference. There is a difference between that and having 2 guys line up directly behind the quarterback in his back pocket.
Yeah.
And pushing as soon as he gets the snap.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I actually don't hate this proposal. It doesn't completely do away with the ability to have some form of the push, but
yeah, I don't want to see the play banned. I hate that. I just want to see them enforce the rules.
Maybe I just hate the Eagles and the fact that they're the shitheads that do it.
Well, yes, that certainly adds to it, 100%. If I don't know, if Jacksonville was doing this, would you care?
No,
probably not.
I might if we played them.
but the fact that Philly's in our division and we play them twice a year and they've been going to the Super Bowl and that type of thing, then yes, and winning Super Bowls, then yes, it becomes a little bit bigger of an issue for us.
Well, and their fate and they're used, like, I think in the game against us, they tried it on 3 or 4 different plays, on top of the fact that the one set was done 20 times against us, and they're sitting there. It's like, it was just stupid. I mean, the whole thing looked ridiculous. They're sitting there purposely trying to call us offsides because, that was the first bit, and then Luvu just kept jumping over, which was hilarious.
Well, I mean, he's just trying to time his jump, and that's, again,
exactly
that goes back.
And they were doing it
for years.
It's too bad that he didn't just knock the shit out of Hurts.
But to me, it almost goes along the lines of when they okay, and I'm not talking about a position here. I'm talking about a play. When you have kicks in the game, an extra point, field goal, punting, you cannot, on defense, you cannot line someone up directly over the long snapper.
Right.
And you really can't touch them. Like what they used to do is they would knock him on the top of the head to knock him down as soon as he snapped the ball. That's what defensive linemen used to do. Or you would just push him over because he doesn't have any balance because he's got both hands on the ball. So you would knock him back flat on his ass and you could go in to kick. So they have that rule. So I think it's, that's for player protection. That's to protect the long snapper. nothing else. That's why that rule is there. And so I think there's something, I personally, I don't think the NFL really cares about player safety. That could be a whole nother thing, because that's, if you did, you wouldn't have Thursday night games. You certainly wouldn't have Friday night games. But so I don't think it will, because that's what some people have said. We need to get rid of the tush push because of player safety. But so I don't think it'll ever be relieved, or not relieved, but banned because of player safety, or even, tinkered with under the name of player safety. Again, I just think it needs to be enforced by the rules. So, like, if you get a moment over the next week, go back and watch video, find video of the championship game, of that series of plays at the goal line, and look for the camera angle that goes down the goal line. And the offensive linemen are lined up over the ball, which is illegal.
Right.
The defensive players are lined up over the ball. There's supposed to be a gap. There's no gap.
But then you're absolutely right. And then what happens is, like, they're voting on this to try to ban it. That's the proposal. But it's like, you're right. What if they just enforce the rules that are already established? Like, why are we allowing this play to happen? Why not? And of course, the Eagles are the ones that would bitch the most about it, because they're the ones that are doing it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, actually, it's a surprising thing to me, and I know some teams have tried this, is why aren't more teams trying it?
Yeah.
Or more successful with it, quite honestly. And I think that's a big thing that goes into why some teams want it banned, is because they haven't figured out how to do this very simple play of converting a very short down.
I know, I'm surprised by that too, because you're right, like you said, simple plays, not that hard. Every team should have figured it out by now.